Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about the women who are reshaping our world. Coming up, we head to Afghanistan where the burqa is experiencing a comeback and where some politicians want to reintroduce stoning into the penal code. Also, the international war against sex trafficking and prostitution. What happens when the customer is the one who gets punished? And Maya Mahmoud's Got Talent, how one young woman in a hijab is rapping for women's rights in Egypt. But first, during the Taliban regime, Afghan women were deprived of all of their rights. But these days, as NATO troops leave Afghanistan, the signs of progress being made during the last 12 years seem to be disappearing. Even in areas controlled by Hamid Karzai's government, there are major setbacks. Some politicians are now wanting to withdraw the only law against domestic violence and reintroduce stoning into the penal code. This report from Miyuki Droz-Aramaki and Kate Rousseau.
Despite 12 years of Western presence in Afghanistan, many women in Kabul's main bazaar have re-adopted the burqa. The country may be in the midst of an economic crisis, but here, shops that sell the full veil are thriving.
The mesh is too wide.
Do you have one with smaller gaps?
In the makeshift changing room, a woman is replacing her old burqa.
This one should fit you.
I let my wife choose which one she wants. For me, they're all the same.
The garment costs between 5 and 30 euros. Last year, this shop sold 35,000. Is that more than the year before?
Yes, 50% more. People from all over the country buy these. All Afghans know them and appreciate them.
For centuries, women in the Afghan provinces have donned the burqa, but not in the capital, Kabul. Yet the full veil is making a comeback, symbolic for some of the country's worsening civil rights situation. With the NATO pullout, radical Islamists are once again imposing their own set of laws. A few weeks ago, some members of parliament tried to reintroduce stoning as a punishment for adultery. The idea caused an outcry in the international community and was eventually dropped. But many, like this imam, would like to adopt such laws.
We do not consider stoning as violence against women. A wife, a married woman, has no reason to commit adultery. No matter if the whole world opposes this penalty, it must be implemented. It is Sharia law.
The West has poured millions of dollars into Afghanistan to promote human rights. But now spending cuts are jeopardizing many projects. Among them are shelters for women, refuges that had been fully financed by foreign agencies. The director has given us unprecedented access to this safe house, which can accommodate 20 women and 8 children. Many of the residents are trying to finalise a divorce and have received death threats from their husbands' families. Farima has been here for 2 years.
My husband was addicted to heroin. He didn't care about me or our children. His mother used to beat me. One day he chased me away. He told me, "I have no money for you. Go to Kabul. I do not care if you sleep in the streets."
Others have similar stories or worse. The youngest resident is 13. She was gang raped. The director, who can't be identified, believes the situation for Afghan women can only get worse.
For the moment, activists can still protest, but after the departure of foreigners, it'll be over. Men will be free to slaughter their wives.
This shelter has already seen its budget cut by 20%. If the fall in funding continues, the centre will have to shut down altogether, leaving its residents to fend for themselves in a country where women are second-class citizens.
Here in France, in the coming months, the Senate is going to be voting to back part of a bill that imposes a €1,500 fine on anybody paying for sex. The issue has sparked heated debate in a country long associated with a liberal view to sex and sexuality. Now, we've seen academics, intellectuals, even celebrities, including the actress Catherine Deneuve, weighing in on the debate. But the move in France is part of a broader international trend where countries such as Ireland and Finland are also pursuing similar legislation. For more on this story, let's now speak to Andrea Matocci, a specialist on sex trafficking from the London-based Equality Now organisation. Andrea, thanks for joining us. As I just said, here in France, this legislation has been causing an uproar. Many are claiming that male clients will be unfairly singled out and penalised. What do you say to that?
What we see is this as the most effective way to basically tackle sexual exploitation, and that includes trafficking for sexual exploitation, and as the best way to start to achieve and to get closer to gender equality. So when Sweden passed this law in 1999 as the first country to do so, it made very clear that this is part of a broader effort to get towards gender equality within Sweden, because in the view of this approach, it's very difficult to have gender equality when it's considered completely normal and okay to purchase some actually sexual favors, let's say, from someone in prostitution, the majority of whom happen to be women and girls, with the majority of those paying for sex happening to be men and women. And that's why this is seen as a fundamental gender equality issue and as one of the main signs that gender inequality still persists.
So why is this type of legislation better than, say, decriminalisation?
So what we've seen across the world where there has been decriminalization and legalization, we see this as somewhat of a failed experiment, and there's a huge amount of trafficking, coercion, and exploitation, even within the legal sectors of these countries, so not to mention the illegal sectors. Many of the women that I've spoken to in the brothels, the legal window brothels in Amsterdam, for example, have been trafficked. They pretty much all have pimps. They're not keeping their earnings. They are working many more shifts than they thought that they would be, even if they knew they were entering prostitution when they were going there.
Andrea, the saying is that prostitution is the world's oldest profession. Clearly, these laws are not going to end prostitution, but isn't it part of changing the male mindset as much as anything else?
Most people would say agriculture is actually the oldest profession, but also the idea that this is something that's inevitable and something that therefore should not even be kind of targeted or tackled or attempted to reduce this. You could say that about very many crimes, about very many phenomena. You could say child abuse will always be there and has always been there. Murder has always been there and will always be there, and therefore we shouldn't try to change it. Like you said, the main message that this is sending is that if we want an equal society, and that includes equality between men and women, but also between races, between classes, between ethnicities, between people with different socioeconomic status, basically, that you're going to have to start trying to tackle the demand side of prostitution, and that's the most effective way to reduce the whole scale and the amount of people who are exploited in this industry.
Andrea Matocci from the London-based Equality Now organisation, thank you. And in other news, the US Senate has confirmed Janet Yellen as the next head of the US Federal Reserve. It was the last procedural hurdle for the 67-year-old before taking over next month. She will be the first woman to lead the bank in its 100-year history. Also here in France, Oscar-winning New Zealand director Jane Campion is going to head the jury for the 67th Cannes Film Festival in May. Campion won an Oscar for the Best Screenplay for her 1993 film The Piano. She's also the only woman ever to win the top Cannes prize, the Palme d'Or, for the same film. And finally, with the Middle East hit TV show Arab's Got Talent as her stage, the 18-year-old Mayam Mahmoud recently stunned the audience as she rapped about sexual harassment and the treatment of women in Egypt. The teenager didn't win the program, but she did succeed in throwing the spotlight on something bigger than herself, as Luke Brown reports.
The audience and judges on Arab's Got Talent may have been expecting something different. Mayam Mahmoud raising eyebrows with her rap lyrics. This performance is focusing on the growing phenomenon of sexual harassment.
البنات في مجتمعنا متقسمين في النقاب في الحجاب وفي بين البنين في قضايا كتير حوالينا متوقفة على البنت على لبسها على شكلها وده أصلا مش شرط إزاي بتحكم عليا من شعري ولا طرحتي لو يوم بصيت عليا مش أنا اللي هداري كسفتي بتعاكس وبتتحرش في إنك صح مش غلط لو حتى بس بالكلام دي مش معاكسة ده غلط.
Politically and socially aware lyrics have already become Mayam Mahmoud's trademark. Rapping openly about sexual harassment is her way of breaking the taboo surrounding violence against women and the culture of victim blaming. She hopes to change society.
If everyone thinks that another revolution will take place, I tell them the next revolution will be a women's revolution.
Mayam may have leapt to fame thanks to her rapping, but it's the Muslim veil she wears that's posing a problem. On social networks, some accuse her of sullying Islam.
I've met a lot of people who told me that I shouldn't be rapping while wearing a hijab headscarf. I've always replied that the two things aren't related. I believe that how I look shouldn't affect my job. Why should I stop doing something I love because of the way I look or because of my religion?
Mayam does have the support of her family, her mother encouraging her to write poetry aged 12. As she challenges Egyptian attitudes, Mayam is giving a voice to the country's women. Her success demonstration that message has struck a chord. As well as recently holding her first public concerts, Mayam Mahmood made it to the semi-finals of the primetime talent show that shot her to prominence.
And that's it for this edition. If you'd like to comment on what you've just seen, check out our Facebook page, France24/the51%, or do send us a tweet at _51%. We really love to hear from you. Until our next program, bye for now.